This is Joe Morse with Ross McKnight, and my brother Eric Morse is on the line. Say hi, Eric.
We're doing this thing.
Howdy.
Our topic today is the Modern Church Emasculating. And so I thought it would be appropriate to put Ross on a pillow on a booster seat to start. We're still working on the technical aspect.
I'm on my
the
booster
logistics.
seat.
Yeah. So let's get right into it because this is a fascinating conversation.
I guess mutts are short in general. I don't know.
Okay, you're going. Yeah, you want to
We'll
explain what your
I'm just
genes?
more American than you.
Actually, no.
Okay.
I've done my genes, and our ancestors invented America.
Okay.
We've been here. At least one side of the family has
Mine
been
just
here
invented sausage. So
since 1620. Oh, the guy that
since we're speaking of the Church Impotent,
one of the founder. I guess not really founder of America, but he's the one that came over through the Great Migration.
So anyway, obviously Joe is bigger than me, and so we're just trying to get that out there since our topic is about the Church Impotent. But I really don't think that, I think what's more relevant is
matter. I mean, come on, people.
I think the Church Impotent. I don't know. It's probably that concept's probably best represented by the number of vasectomies sitting in church on any given Sunday.
Boom! Right there. So, yeah. So that I don't know if there's a
trend.
I mean, the pews are probably more comfortable for those people, but
true. And I don't know if there's any hard data on
I don't
that.
know.
We do have some data on the number of men versus women in the
Okay.
church.
Let's
So
go
there was
with
a
it.
Notre Dame study in the 90s. More than 85% of those who involved in the ministry to the poor, sick, and grieving are women. More than 80% of CCD teachers and sponsors of the catechumens are women. More than 80% of prayer group members are women. More than 75% of those who lead or take part in the adult Bible study or religious discussions are women. Almost 60% of those involved in youth and recreational ministries are women. 52% of parish council members are female. 58% of those identified as the most influential leaders in the 36 parish survey were women. And that was a Notre Dame survey in the 90s. And I don't think it's changed much since then.
That resonates with me, actually. Yeah.
Does that sound about right? And my wife said, I think it's like 2-to-1. I think that's some stat that she's heard. 2-to-1 female to male at church every week.
Right. Interesting. And that's Sundays.
Right.
What about daily mass? Do you guys see the same kind of numbers there?
Yeah. I'd say that.
Daily mass?
It's easier to estimate too. Daily mass, he doesn't know what that is.
There's a thing. Yeah, there's a thing. Go early in the morning. But no, I think, I don't know if it's because of the time I go, but so I go Fridays, and it's either couples or a few families, but then I would say, if anything, it's single men or husbands who are there alone.
Huh.
So I don't know. That's an anecdotal data, but
Right.
It seems like the majority isn't necessarily men or women in that realm.
Gotcha.
I don't know how that plays into it. Maybe that Friday at 6 a.m. is more austere and therefore more attractive to men, but something to consider.
Aesthetically, yeah. Right? And
Aesthetically,
early in the
yeah.
morning, and not being within earshot of kids waking up and shouting at each other. Yeah. Yeah, probably aesthetically, I would definitely see that as probably more
masculine.
Yeah, more masculine and austere to get
Liturgy.
up early and go, the suffering aspect and the toughness, right, of getting up early and going to the mass. Like my dad, for years, has done adoration at like 5 a.m. on Sundays, which is just the worst time because, you get up at like 4:30 and you go, and then you come back, and then it's too late to kind of get in bed, you know.
Wow.
But he's been doing that for years, and I think part of it's like it's an exercise in sort of this like mental and physical toughness.
Yeah.
But so right, but I guess to tie back into what were y'all's experiences? I guess because one thing we haven't mentioned is so I'm like firmly in the millennial generation, and y'all are Gen Xers.
Well,
essentially,
I mean, are 85-year-olds Gen Xers? Is that we're
so does that resonate with y'all as far as your experience, kind of coming up and like going to the CCD classes or whatever they called it back then, like something in Latin, I'm sure.
Pre-Vatican II.
Pre-Vatican II. But like basically how you were educated, who you were educated by, who you saw, mostly in terms of your day-to-day life. If did y'all go? I don't know. Did y'all go to Catholic elementary schools?
No.
No. Okay. So I did, and yeah, I mean I was surrounded by women all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. The only man that taught me 6th grade history, and he was a divorcee, overweight, and just utterly flaccid.
Well, and I think that could be a function of education in general.
Sure.
Most educators are women by far, and so that may be just a function of that.
Right, but so if we're going to critique the church is kind of the originator of modern education as we know it, though, right? So let's just throw that in there and critique.
Yeah.
critique them from that point of view as well.
So another poll, or not a poll, study. They judged people's response about religion based on traditionally masculine traits. And they found that masculine men, this is a study by Terman and Cox Miles, that they found that masculine men are not interested in religion. Most masculine of all are still the men who have little or no interest in religion. Very masculine men showed little interest in religion. Very feminine men, great interest. Women who have highly feminine scores were also especially religious, while women who had more masculine scores were neutral or adverse to religion.
Gosh, how are they using the word religion there?
And how are they using masculine and feminine? Like, what is how do they determine these masculine or very masculine men?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any of that. But I think,
okay.
I mean, can we say that is true from experience? It seems to me that is true.
Let's assume that they're using religion
notwithstanding
as sort of
the people
of
in this conversation.
Practice of like an organized, functional, regular, participatory event.
Uh-huh.
We'll assume that that's how they're using the word religion.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that fine?
And being interested in it is a matter of, I guess, participating in it then.
Going to an event or
going to the services.
Service, yeah.
Engaging in the Bible studies, maybe serving on councils or being an elder or something like that. And
yeah. Right. Frankly, I see that as being extremely relevant to my point of view. Is I've become less and less interested in sort of the apostolate, right? And like, so for example, Joe and I go to a parish in Covington, Louisiana, which will remain unnamed, where there are 72 different quote-unquote ministries, which of course are actually not ministries, but apostolates.
Right.
And yeah, I would say that primarily they're run by women or older men who need something to do. To put it bluntly.
Okay.
Yeah,
and who are tired, moreover.
And I don't have any experience in those. Maybe that's to that point.
Right.
I'm not
right. So Joe,
looking to do that.
I guess relatively, yeah. You're. How many years have you been going to this parish?
Just one.
So just one. So I've been there, basically my whole life, except for the periods of time when I was not living in the state.
So maybe it could be just because of my state of existence that my ministry is my kids.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. But yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's that's a fair point. That's probably how I feel too. But I would say probably the more masculine and I guess analytical point of view is that we're more interested in sort of what is true, therefore what do I do to act in accordance with what is true, rather than like, okay, how do I use this beautiful bureaucracy to minister to the greatest quantity of people and show them God's love and be compassionate and understanding and just suck all the testosterone out of my body.
Well, and so that's a good point, and that brings up the idea of spiritual types, right? And you were looking at that. So, what did you find out about that?
Yeah, well, okay, so just in general, I mean, men tend to be more analytical, logical, objective, impersonal, and women are more emotional, nurturing, subjective, personal, and so those personality types and traits translate into spiritual types and traits. Like men will seek out more analytical type spirituality. Women will seek out more nurturing type spirituality. And you can see that in the church, right? Because you have the different orders that kind of focus on different means of spirituality,
right.
And like the Dominicans, for instance, would be more analytical and therefore more masculine, and the Franciscans would be more service oriented, right, and therefore more feminine.
That's why I didn't go to school there.
Good. And
I don't like serving people.
The idea is that the church can and should provide for all these spiritual types, right?
Yes, absolutely.
There's an avenue to fulfill your spiritual needs through the church, no matter what you are. But it seems like these days, the more feminine spiritual types are being emphasized more, and I think that's well, for one. We've been talking about the ministries and how, and you guys brought up the point where you have ministries that are your children, basically, right? So that
apostolates, I guess.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I don't know the difference.
Basically, your engagement with the church falls more toward your personal
the
family.
domestic church, the sort
church.
Of incremental and the smallest unit of the church, I guess.
Yeah.
We're lower on the totem pole than the parish priests, who always say they're at the bottom of the totem pole. But
okay, so but what if it's not that? What if Christianity is really made for women? And so I asked that because there's a Gallup poll. I don't know when it was, but I think it was maybe the last couple decades, and it showed that women tend to strongly assert that the Bible is totally accurate in all its teachings. I think that's more than men. Strongly to affirm the importance of religious faith in their life. Strongly to disagree that Christ sinned while he was on earth. To choose an orthodox biblical description of their God. To meet the criteria for born-again Christians, strongly to agree that the Bible can be taken literally, and to believe that if a person does not consciously accept Christ as his Savior, he will be condemned to hell. So, these are pretty basic
kind of like fundamentalist,
But it's
fundamental, but also bridging, kind of wavering on the line of fundamental and fundamentalist. You know?
Yeah, but so I mean,
to be how would I say that? Fundamentally fundamental.
Fundamentally fundamentalist.
I don't know.
But that seems like, to me, those are basic precepts of the faith.
Yeah,
so
sure.
If women are more likely to agree with that, then does that make Christianity more suited for women? Does it seem to...
Interesting. So would you say that, kind of like speculating off of that, would you say that men are more, I guess, questioning of authority, and women are more agreeable? So they would be more accepting of things such as dogmatic, you must go along with this, whereas men are going to be more inclined to question it, at least,
which makes them
get back, I guess, call it heretic and like blast it out of the...
By being less...
Because we question more, and therefore when we chomp down on a truth, then we're going to go out there and kick butt until you believe it too. And, you know...
It's possible.
Die on a grill and say, turn me over, I'm done on this side, you know.
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence, right.
Pray for us.
Missed that one, yeah. Right, so that's interesting, right? Are men better...
The faculties that make them question are also the same faculties that then make them stronger proponents of the faith once they agree or find the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and I think it goes back to the idea that there are different paths to the truth and to the church, and that, so I think the evangelization through care of the poor, that type, the Mother Teresa style evangelization, that's I think very effective as well. But then also the intellectual, powerful oratory is also a way that brings people.
Yeah, the OPs.
Right.
I guess though, so what's always really surprised me is seeing the so what is it? The Missionaries of Charity, right? Seeing the men in their blue little robes, like
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, so
they have men.
So they're
Oh.
And I've always been really surprised to see that because I'm like, that would never be me. Like
yeah.
I know, like I'm not like the lovey-dovey, like, you know, like
nurturing,
like merciful God guy. Like, I mean, obviously I acknowledge the like infinite mercy of God, but that's not like what I focus on in my day-to-day spirituality in my life. You know, I'm not like, oh, let's just have mercy on everybody, which seems to be the trend, you know, the unqualified trend of the church today. Let's just everybody needs mercy, you know, and they do, but I mean, like, they also have brains, and they need to use them. So, I've always seen that, and I'm like, wow, like, you would never see me in... First of all, the biggest thing for me, believe it or not, is just the image. Like, I see this guy in, like, this, like, almost, like, baby blue.
Okay.
Like, this kind of, like, blend between royal and baby blue, and I'm just like...
Just a baby blue onesie, right?
Yeah, it's like, you look like that's extremely emasculating.
Yeah.
Like, I could never wear that because I would just feel...
But so there's...
Who would take me seriously? Would I take myself seriously? And should people take me seriously?
That's a good question. And so...
Who designs these things?
The dress, the clergy. So there's some pretty awesome Cossacks and, you know, apparel for priests and...
Sure.
I think the altar server gear is pretty emasculating.
Flimsy, yeah.
It's like a doily, and I don't know if
hey, nice doily, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I would.
Man, where'd you get that doily?
I don't know if we could do something about that, but there was a quote about, speaking of the clergy, that this is a lay person quoting this. Life is a football game in which the men are fighting it out on the gridiron, while the minister is up in the grandstand explaining it to the ladies. So. And his criticism...
Who said that?
It's anonymous.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, is that true? I mean, have we lost the idea of the warrior priest?
Yeah.
The image of the Irish Catholic priests, you know, Roman, by which I mean, like, Roman Rite invasion of the British Isles. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Am I? Okay, I'm not. I agree with the church on everything, right? Okay, so so that image of like the Irish priest, right, with the crazy tonsure, so in the Roman Rite, and as is now common it's not really even employed in many orders now, which is sad, but okay, so we still got the guys with the tonsure in some of our extant orders, right? So the classic tonsure, like, look at all the images of St. Thomas Aquinas, you see the ring of hair around his head, right, which, so it's a humility thing. So the Irish would shave their head to the middle, okay, like even with the ears, so that all the front would be shaved off, and the hair would start about the middle of the head here where the ears are, and then they would just let it grow. So it would just be like flowing in the wind, okay? So I remember reading this book called The Flowers of Ireland, and it was about Irish Catholicism, okay, or Irish Christianity before St. Bridget and, the councils in England, and, the Irish Rite kind of faded out. And it was, the author described this image of how, of course, the priests would travel around to the different local, well, you wouldn't call them lords, but, local landholders, nobles, quote unquote, and celebrate mass in their courtyards, right? Kind of in the weather, out in the weather, like set up a impromptu altar. They're standing behind the altar, the wind's blowing. They have these flowing garments and this huge long mane of hair, and they're just like, chanting the mass out there into the wind. And that kind of image, struck me as extremely desirable, extremely masculine, especially the image of St. Patrick, right? Being essentially like a foreigner to Ireland, a Romanized Briton, as some people would say he was, and going into that sort of wildness of what Ireland really still is, and the crazy things that they did over there, and the crazy mythology they had over there, and bringing Christianity into that spirit. That always struck me as extremely masculine. And now, what I typically see today, what is y'all's impression of the modern mass? Like, when you go to church, is it something that you really relish? I know, like, Joe goes out across the lake every once in a while for a Tridentine mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to have these injections every once in a while of just like, okay, like, this is what it is. It's not what I have to experience or what I have to essentially suffer every Sunday. And why are we suffering through that?
That's it.
Why are we suffering through that? Why are men suffering through the modern liturgy? It kills me.
Absolutely.
Okay, like, it kills me to go to mass. The only reason I go is for the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Like, shoot.
Well, and that brings up a very good point. So when, college fell away from the church, there was a reversion. We started going to church in San Diego. Just really bad liturgy, ugly building. The people were great, fantastic, but we didn't really understand. I didn't really understand the liturgy and the Eucharist until we started going to an actual a mass where they appreciate beauty. They have amazing music and take the liturgy seriously. Yeah. And so that is when it started clicking, and I was like, all right, well, this is it. This is why you do it. It's not for the people, it's not for the social aspect, and it's not even for the intellectual aspect, even though that's, I think, brings people legitimately to the faith. It's about the Christ, and I think you can get the experience fully when you have an appropriate liturgy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, so here's a question then. I mean, I think we're all on the same page in terms of
That's troublesome then. Let me find somewhere we disagree.
The reverence of Mass and the quality of the aesthetics and everything. Why is it that these mass-produced modern architecture? I think Rod Dreher had an amazing description of these churches as Our Lady of Pizza Hut. Like, why? Okay, so why are they so popular? Why are they so common, and why are they so popular? Every Our Lady of Pizza Hut here in San Antonio is packed every Sunday.
Yeah,
and
Our Lady of the Galaxy.
The most money. They have it all. Why do people love it? Seem to love it.
That's the same here. So we moved to one of the most Catholic places on earth, the New Orleans area, and just horrible Our Lady of Pizza Huts all over the place, and they're really popular.
Alongside the ancient churches, truly ancient. This is the second oldest European settlement in North America, and it's actually really you could say it's the oldest inhabited, because Jamestown is just whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And we've got these beautiful ancient churches that are still being used. And they're gorgeous. And then, like Joe said, so recently in a town neighboring ours, the church parish, they built a new church. They turned the old church into a hall. It always looked like a hall, it never looked like a church.
Right.
And so they replaced this like horrible modern edifice with an even more horrid modern edifice right next to it that looks like, I don't know, like what, an aquarium, maybe something like an aquarium.
So why is it
modern
why do
art?
people love it? Or did they?
Do they?
Do they really secretly not love it, but they just go for the community?
For the mortification? I mean, I don't...
Well, who's giving them money? I mean, look, old people have got money, right?
Yeah.
And the older generations, maybe, are they still stuck in that mindset? Like, are we still in that situation where people are like, oh, yeah, like, we acknowledge that we had Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict clarify a lot of things for us, but we still like our hideous churches and our lack of liturgical imagination. So we're just going to keep doing that until we die. I guess...
it doesn't seem... Yeah, it seems like they're either brainwashed or they're not really interested in it.
They don't care? I don't
think anyone appreciates postmodern architecture. I mean, it's objectively...
We'll say anyone in their right mind.
It's meant to be ugly.
Like anyone who has any sort of aesthetic training,
right?
Or just, I mean, you don't even need... do you really need training? Is beauty objective? Is it kind of like...
It is. It's objective.
It's self-evident.
Yeah.
Like we know something is beautiful. Like when you see a waterfall, that feeling of awe, like it's awesome. It's full of... Like you just stare at... The first time you ever see a waterfall, especially if it's a very impressive one, you can't help yourself. I think I remember the first time I saw a real waterfall, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
But...
So it should be awe-inspiring, and the postmodern architecture is the opposite, intentionally opposite of that.
But I can liken that perfectly to an image. And look, I just saw it was like it was on one of my social media feeds. Like I just saw this picture of an ancient cathedral in, I think Chile. Okay, so it was a picture, and it was about this big, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
It should do that.
Here's a question then, kind of drawing back to the theme: is the postmodern architecture more appealing to women?
Interesting. It's softer.
Is it?
I don't think it is, though. I mean, the one in our neighboring town. It's the most, it's like sharp edges and like really harsh.
Do you know women that appreciate it?
I don't know anybody who appreciates it.
No.
I think that's the conundrum, isn't it? Like who's behind the curtain here?
Do they? Okay, so I've heard that men in general are more visual, right?
Okay.
So men appreciate aesthetics more. So could it be that the women just don't mind as much?
Right.
Does it coincide with being analytical, as being more visual? Like we're putting these parts together and we're saying, okay, this is valid. Like I can assemble these parts and I see that they form a cohesive whole, and therefore I can accept the validity of it. And that's kind of the same way you build a cathedral and the same way you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there have been studies there.
Point. So the modern architecture is less linear in terms of, it's not the cruciform, right? It's not a long, narrow form.
Good point.
It's more communal, right?
Right.
It's more around.
Right.
Everyone's looking at each other. It's more personable.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe it's
more communist.
There's an element to that.
Yeah, and I was thinking a lot of this, all the Pizza Huts came up after Vatican II, but a lot of the hideous ones were before that. There's a book with
40s.
Yeah, 40s, 30s, 40s, and that I think also aligns with the stark, like the peak postmodern / if you can say communist postmodernism, because they do overlap a lot, even though they're supposed to be diametrically opposed.
Yeah, right.
So the rise of that before everyone realized that the Soviet system was a complete debacle. So it was before that, and
some people don't realize that.
Right, and they.
That's another podcast.
We're gonna have to pray for them.
Man, I think the church architecture topic has been kind of beat senseless almost. I think the horse is almost dead, but that's a problem because how are we supposed to influence this, and are we influencing it in any positive direction?
We could attend beautiful buildings.
Yeah,
churches.
Right.
We could put our bodies there. Yeah.
And we try that. Like, I will avoid the absolute. I mean, you're gonna go to the best liturgy around.
Yeah.
That you can, and the best, the most beauty that you can get.
Yeah.
You're gonna try to do that.
That's
anyway.
practical.
And that, like, we just can't travel an hour each way.
So that's the issue. We can't. We try to, and probably the reason Joe and I both go to the church we go to is because we're like, okay, we need to bloom where we're planted. We need to grow and develop and influence our local communities so that it can be organic and be truly, subsidiary. Mm-hmm. And that's such an issue because definitely, without a doubt, I don't think anybody could dispute this, who fills the roles within the church? Mostly older people have been there longer,
mm-hmm.
And maybe that's as it should be. I don't know. I'm not here to tear things down, but let's just look at the facts. I think unequivocally across the board, we see that older people fill roles within the church. You've got older women doing the altar society thing. You've got older men in Knights of Columbus and men's club, Mm-hmm. You've got older people, or what I see is the church decides to place newcomers in the parish in roles of authority within those ministries, which is not effective for the apostolate. It's effective for, making them feel welcome, right? And so where that leaves people like us, even y'all, right? Even though you're, dying, but
we're on our deathbeds. Is Gen Xers on?
It's okay. Like what we see, we see more accurately, in a sense, what is true and good and beautiful, because we've grown up in an environment where we had to distinguish between, okay, are we going to choose this extremely libertine way of viewing the world and way of living, or this more narrowly guided view that frees us internally, in our internal and our spiritual and our psychological and our the well-being of our intellect. And that dichotomy, being placed into having to choose, essentially, I think most people our age have made a decision which way we want to view the world, and it's more it's kind of black and white. It's more black and white maybe than what previous generations have felt or lived in or lived through or experienced culturally. Does that make sense? Am I making sense here?
That's
because we're not broadly Christian anymore.
Absolutely,
the U.S. is not
point.
Broadly Christian anymore.
Right.
So maybe the sense of urgency is not there for them. The sense of urgency is there for us, and so how do we break in and make change without having power, authority, age, experience, and wealth? I don't know. I see that as an issue. I've seen that as an issue, especially having had the opportunity to observe the growth of a parish basically my entire life, which is fairly long.
Well, it's interesting because I you mentioned the age thing and the older folks. I think the generation that's becoming the older folks generation, the baby boomers, they're really, I think, to be blamed for a lot of the
screw them.
Well, it's their generation that, first of all, they weren't at the helm when the church started introducing these
reforms.
Right. Yeah.
These Pizza Huts or like liturgical dancing or anything like that, but they embraced it as a church going like congregation. And Joe, growing up, we had the option. Our family had the option of going to a kind of like a Pizza Hut or a really gorgeous traditional church made in the 20s, and we ended up going to the Pizza Hut. And so why was that? Why did we do that? And I think partly is because it was appealing to that generation, the baby boomer generation, to go to these non-traditional, non-conformist type churches. So I don't know. The generational thing is definitely a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you can't really blame it on the baby boomers. They're almost victims more than anything, because as our mom talks about it,
formation. Yeah.
Well, formation, but she had there was almost a bait and switch where they were taught, all these things, eating meat on Friday was sin, and then all of a sudden it wasn't, and girls couldn't be on the altar, and then all of a sudden they could be, and so all these things shifted, and so it's
gotta be jarring.
Yeah, that's why some people
faith, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even simple things like that.
It does.
But I might contest with the example of the Church of Latter-day Saints, right? Because the upheaval of changing doctrine from polygamy's great to no, polygamy's super bad, like don't do that. That's pretty huge, and yet I still got guys knocking on my door, and they're great, wonderful people.
It's the fastest growing sect in the United States.
Right, because it's compelling, because the people are, look at what they're doing. They're doing something extremely masculine,
What, proselytizing?
in the first place. Yeah, going to your front door, knocking on your door, willing to be, punched in the face. No,
so,
emotionally,
Let's talk about that. So what can we do? I think we're in agreement that there is a problem, crisis of masculinity in the church. So what can we do?
Right.
Do we send
acknowledged by everyone in every single way? Obviously, someone we all probably know and love, Jordan Peterson, acknowledges this culturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just another little soundbite in this whole conversation. But
is this part of it? Is this our way of knocking on the doors? We don't have the white T-shirts and black ties, but
white T-shirts and black ties. That would be an interesting combination. We could try that. It would definitely garner some attention.
Next podcast.
Hey, man, why are you wearing a T-shirt with a tie? Oh, let me tell you.
But yeah,
are you familiar with the doctrine of transubstantiation?
Right.
This church. Okay. Anyway, so
possible solutions. Simple stuff like
question.
Turn off your phone when you're
going live to the world. Go ahead, Eric.
I got a question for you guys. What are your thoughts? So one in this conversation, it seems like one typical situation or one typical proposal for a solution is something like men's groups.
Yeah. We've seen
what are your
that.
thoughts on men's groups in general?
We were
just at one last night.
Yeah. this community has one.
It should be tough to criticize here.
Is it typically called a men's group, or is it something else?
No, it's completely informal.
Tellingly, right, we call it alternately beer club or whiskey club, because...
The whiskey club for men.
Right? What does that mean?
Oh, yeah.
What's the significance of that?
Joe, I've heard about your whiskey club, but I have not heard about a men's group.
Okay.
Well, right,
it's all
I guess
men.
that's what we're referring to. But what's the significance of that, right? Whenever we meet, usually we're drinking.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. We don't drink to excess. I mean, I didn't even have a beer last night. But why is that the focus? You know, is it maybe we're like, oh, alcohol's this manly thing, so we're going to share that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to, you know, see what we like, what we don't like, and it's more of a hobby thing, or is it like life sucks, so let's have some alcohol and talk about it?
I think it is. It's a combination of that.
Yeah.
But
we're all Catholic.
You're more likely to have a whiskey club for men than a whiskey club for women.
Yes.
Right. So it fits. Yeah.
Right, but is it the negative alternative? Right? Is it the negative alternative? Okay, like, how are we able? Like, what can we do as men of the younger generations to express a vibrant and living Catholicism, like a true life in Christ, socially?
Yeah.
That truly enacts some kind of change in our lives, whether socially or excuse me, or, you know, parish wide or church wide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or is that like our cop out? Is like, okay, let's get together and drink and like talk about life and philosophy and theology, because that's what we do. We talk about philosophy, we talk about theology, we talk about cultural critics, we talk about pundits.
Awesome conversation about Pope Francis last night.
Yeah, we did, and you did with our friend Rafi. So, but
let me
jump in.
So it seems like orienting it around something like a whiskey, that makes sense, because guys, it seems like men need something to focus on. It's like the goal. It's the craft, right? It's about the work.
Yeah, there's craftsmanship.
It's not about just getting
One of
together.
us. One
it's
of us.
about directing our intentions towards something, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think women can get together. They don't really need a reason.
Right.
That's just a woman's group actually makes more sense than a men's group, just because of that.
Right.
Of that
so is our group feminine?
No, and I would say that I'm not as interested in a men's group. If you were like, when we just met and you were like, hey, I got this men's group, you want to hang out?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to that. But if you said, you know, we're drinking whiskey Friday, come join us. We got a good one. We're going to
break down
Basil Hayden's and
Pope Francis'
exactly
last encyclical.
Yeah.
Give it a little formation in that way.
Yes. No, and I like that.
Or we're going to talk about, you know, his conversations with the media.
Yeah.
By the way, it's all men.
Right, it's all men.
That doesn't really affect me.
But I think that's the majority of what I do, though. I mean, let's see, I open the doors for people at church at specific times on specific Sundays, you know. And then what else? You know, we do this. That's like our Catholic thing. You know, like that's it, right?
Yeah.
We're doing this thing, which is, I think, positive and good and has an effect. But so, for instance, in high school, right, I was like, man, you'd find me at the abortion clinic like all the time on weekends, out there, you know, talking to people, talking it up, like just out there praying. Sometimes just passively, like I'm out here, I'm standing here, I'm walking around praying. Obviously, now we don't have time for that sort of thing, or allegedly, you know, we don't have time for that sort of thing. But what is it that are we using these things as a positive social force in our lives and in the lives of others? Are they filling a place? Or are they kind of a holding place, right? Are they just kind of a bookmark where we're going to pick up later?
Is there a hierarchy of, I guess, types of spiritual fulfillment? Like, is there a type of ministry or apostolate that is more important or more effective than another.
Yes. The quilt making apostolate.
Yeah,
I mean, on its face value.
I think they all have a good.
Yeah.
I think they're all important to the church. I don't know about all, but most of them are.
There's definitely a hierarchy.
For sure. For sure.
More and less importance, sure. Like the quilt mucking ministry. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure that's definitely influenced someone's conversion in some way, whether direct or indirect, and I'm sure it has had an effect in some sense. But
is there really a quilt making?
Yeah, there is.
Oh wow. So I was gonna say
the 72 different apostolates.
Lecturing is up there.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty important. So that when you're reading the word, it's not every word is stressed.
Yeah, for instance, so I get really distracted when a woman reads. Is that weird?
Interesting.
Am I sexist?
Well, probably yes, but I don't know if that is evidence of that. There's nothing wrong with being sexist. I think that men and women are different. Men and women are different.
We just narrowed our viewership. Sexist males only. And females.
It's true. It's a.
If you're a woman and you don't like other women,
it's a feature. It's a feature of. This isn't a men's rights show, but it's a feature. It's a feature of the church.
Wait,
men and women are different.
Joe needs to clarify why he said sexism is okay.
Sexism is okay because men and women are different, and it is appropriate. I'd say even good. I'd say even good.
There are too many connotations, though, to the word sexism, maybe to clearly articulate what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a pretty loaded word.
Yeah, people are going to take that and run with it.
Yeah.
Just like they do with anything.
I think
it's like saying
I'm ready for that.
It's like saying racism is okay because there are differences between different races.
Well,
race,
and that's wrong.
I disagree
because
that race is a valid interpretation of the phenomena of the
exactly.
world.
Race is fake, and sex is not.
Is race really a phenomenologist's point of view too? We need to get a phenomenologist on here, man. Yeah. Hey, PJP, where are you?
I think the point is, what you're talking about is not sexism the way that most people know about it.
No.
Well, I think that women.
Joe is sexist in a completely irrelevant way.
Okay. And that's totally acceptable.
Yeah, that's totally. Yes, don't worry about a thing. It's all fine. This is all good sexism. But it's true. I mean, is it sexist that I'm attracted to women? Is that sexist?
Oh yeah. Because I've seen.
Yes,
now
it is.
People are saying
that's sexist.
Feminists and transvestites are saying, "Oh, if you're not interested in
a man
that kind of sexual
pretends
activity,
to be a woman, then
you're
feels
sexist.
like a woman, then you're sexist.
Are you? If you're not interested in
which is fine,
suicidal people,
then you're sanist.
Sanist. You're a sanist.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. So, yeah, so there are differences between the sexes, and that doesn't mean that women are inferior. So I need to make that clear. And I was just at a talk talking about the fourth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. They are mother and father intentionally there for a reason together. So they're different. They're not
equal. Let's get that straight. Men and women are not equal because equal simply means same.
Right.
And they're not the
equal.
Same.
There are differences.
Right. So saying men and women are equal is saying that they're the same. And if you subscribe to that point of view, then I'm sorry.
Well,
you're an idiot.
It's biologically
impossible.
Yeah.
Even if you're a masculine woman, you're still a woman, And, and if you're one of the rare hermaphrodites, I'm sorry. You're extremely rare. You're the exception that proves the rule. Obviously, yes. So I would not enforce it, but I would be fine with an altar free of women. At any given time.
That could be one of the solutions to
because it's completely distracting, right? I think it's been a big contributing factor, at least maybe potentially in an indirect manner, to people's just general psychology. We had this argument about, should we use masculine pronouns for God? And then we have a couple of Christian denominations in the U.S. who have said, we should also use feminine pronouns for God, right? No, clearly not. I think Christ said somewhere, call God Father.
Our Father.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't listen to Jesus. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But, and if you're going to listen to Jesus, at least say, whatever the feminine for Jesus is as well. But,
I don't know what that is.
I don't know. But right, I would be fine with that. And I think I would be able to focus more on the Mass if I didn't. It's why I avoid going to extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion who are completely unnecessary and a complete distraction. And actually make the distribution of Holy Communion less efficient, in my opinion, because I've been to churches where there's an altar rail. You know how quickly it goes.
Well, and they do bring out the heavy artillery. They bring a couple priests in there to do that.
Well, so I've seen priest and deacon, okay, and it's gone extremely quickly, and extremely efficiently, and I've never seen a hang up. And actually, I think it goes faster than our weekly experience at our church. Of 10 different Eucharistic ministers, and
nice.
It's just a mess, and 4 lines, and so 4 lines that branch into 8.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So right, what purpose is that serving, and is it pastoral, or is it just obnoxious and completely a facile understanding of the pastoral necessity of the parish church?
Well, considering the goal is efficiency. Say that it is more efficient. That isn't necessary. That shouldn't be the goal.
No,
so we're talking about the point of the faith, and
but efficiency also lessens distraction, right?
Yeah, totally.
Could be,
but it does.
And you shouldn't do things in order to decrease
efficiency. No,
right?
I mean, why would you? It just makes it distracting. You have all the men going especially the engineers, what? What is wrong with you people? Did you ever go to elementary school and line up for recess?
Exactly.
So let's get rid of all the Vatican II reform. I think that would make it more masculine. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it would. It would. I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing, because there are people who would say unofficially that maybe the Holy Spirit is the archetype of the feminine, right? Not the female, but the feminine.
Would we have something of a limited resource, right? So part of having the female altar servers and Eucharistic ministers is because they provide where there's a dearth.
Is there a dearth?
With that, I've experienced that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have the data behind it, but anecdotally, yeah, I think there is a dearth.
What's your experience?
Well, I see in parishes where they have exclusively male altar servers, and
I've seen plenty of
do it the right
male
way.
altar servers. If they're exclusively male, I've seen
it is.
A lot.
It's very popular.
It's very popular to be an altar server.
Interesting.
There.
Okay.
And not necessarily. And
contrarily, on the contrary,
when you introduce women, they tend to excel and do well. You like that?
And then the boys leave.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've seen that. I've experienced it. I don't care
Really?
who you are and what you say. I know that it's true because I've experienced it in multiple different places.
Yeah.
Well,
that's happened in education, certain fields that women get in there, take over.
Because, to be honest, men get bored to some extent. It's just okay, you're fulfilling this function, therefore I don't need to. I'm going to find something else that's more interesting to do. Right?
Yeah.
But the more interesting thing to do is to go to seminary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What's the next step when that role is taken? And if it's extremely important within the context of the liturgy, there's a reason for that. And there's probably an entire school of thought that follows the theology or the liturgical theology behind altar servers, that I don't fully comprehend and don't pretend to. But right, men, speaking to efficiency again, right, we're not looking, to be clear, like, I'm not saying that efficiency is some goal. I'm just saying that men think this way. Right? At least men with more testosterone than estrogen think this way, think more analytically, you know. And tellingly, you know, I'm in finance, right? You're in web development. Like, okay, so we look at the scope of things, like, how do I make this better? And for us, better is more efficient, more beautiful, and
right, and just the correct
just
way
more
to
functional,
do it, right?
The correct way to do it.
The correct way. What's the correct way? What's the truth? Yeah,
and makes it appropriately aesthetically appealing.
So another angle, and I've heard this. Yeah. So it has been difficult. You've heard the theology of the body, and heard about the church is the bride of Christ, and that means you and me and you, Eric. So I don't know about y'all.
We're relationship to God.
I don't know about y'all, but it's difficult to handle for me. Like I don't like to wrap my mind around that. That's not something that
it's not comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So
theology is generally not comfortable.
And so the
contrary to the idea that religion is the opiate of the masses.
Interesting. Yeah, it's not always easy, but
atheism really is the opiate.
And
another conversation.
Are you telling Joe to suck it up, Buttercup?
Yeah, that sounds like that. No, so there is.
Be a man, suck it up.
Yeah, which is
for the caricature. Okay.
Interesting. That's ironic, actually.
Be a man, suck it up. Be feminine.
Right. Exactly.
In relationship to God,
can't you be a real man and be feminine? Yeah. But Catholicism especially has a component, an aspect that I think a lot of other Protestant sects do not, and that is Our Lady, the devotion to Our Lady.
Right.
And so somebody said that was a way that Catholics were able to channel some of their religious energy, so that they can maintain their masculinity, as opposed to get rid of it.
Right.
So that could be a solution, is bring more Mary into our liturgical, well, not necessarily liturgical experience, but just our religious life, our devotional life.
Right.
Yeah.
Prayer. Yeah, that's fantastic.
I think, what kind of ties this together is the fact that, right, Mary's title, one of her titles as being the spouse of the Holy Spirit. And yet, there are some, I'll just say, modes of thought and theology that would express the Holy Spirit as the archetype of the feminine. This is not a doctrine or anything, okay? It's just theological exploration.
Interesting.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm referring to a specific priest I know who...
So is that a same-sex marriage? What's going on here?
No, it's not. No, that's what I'm saying, is that, God is really... Right, God, he's our Father. He is... he's always referred to in the masculine. The Spirit referred to in the feminine in many cases. And that's where we get that. In Scripture we see the Spirit referred to in the feminine. However, the Spirit's still God, so
Right.
So there's this feminine aspect of the masculine, right? So there's this sort of paradox, but it's a workable paradox, right? Because we're all created in the image of God. God to us is masculine, but because we're created in His image, He's also the archetype of the feminine. That's where we get
female.
woman, right? That's where we get female. So everyone has a part. Everyone has a part to play, and they don't cancel each other out.
Right.
And that's why we have Mary, right? And that devotion that we can have to her.
And that's why it's not a contradiction; it's a paradox. That's
right.
Right.
Not a contradiction.
Important distinction.
Yeah. And that is an important distinction, and a lot of people use the word paradox right, in place of contradiction, and
right.
they are not the same thing. And we can, I guess, we should probably cite the the language dictionaries there, but right. So Our Lady in that important aspect. But what do men do in relation to that? Right, they want to. The church being the bride of Christ, right? It's feminine. So what are we going to do? We're going to protect it and make sure that its life is well ordered. Protect the doctrine of the faith and ensure that the living faith is well ordered. Right? If the church is the bride of Christ, and the church itself contains, right, the masculine role and the feminine role, what are men going to do within it? Right? So I don't think we're in any way saying like, oh, the church is this masculine thing. No, like, what's my role in my household? Well, I ensure that the house works. Like, I replace the hot water heater when it's broken. Why do we say hot water heater? I don't know. The water heater when it's broken. That's like that's an idiomatic expression. I don't know. It might be local. We say hot water heater. Oh, okay. It's a little redundant. It's like a whole nother. So anyway, another idiomatic expression. We can talk about that one. But right. So what's my role in my household? What's your role in your household? It's the same. Our role in the church is very similar. Yep. You know, it's because the household in itself is kind of this feminine life, really, that continues to breathe, right? It's this place where things are nurtured, where lives are nurtured, where people are fed, where people are loved, cared for.
But the father does have a role in that.
Right.
And that's protection.
I'm going to slap you silly if you misbehave.
And obedience, like the justice.
Right. The domestic church mirroring, of course. We're getting into those roles again. We don't have to be that, categorical.
Another analogy would be country, right? So you've got countries that are considered motherland, right? And you talk about her.
And fatherland.
There is the fatherland. So
but that became dangerous, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know any good connotations of fatherland.
Right. But I think that's to our point, isn't it, Eric? That's what you're saying.
What's that?
That's to your point. You were saying there are many countries that we consider the motherland, right?
Yeah.
And I would consider Louisiana the motherland, like, for sure.
Okay.
Like, I hate the government here, but I'm not leaving. And that's why.
So to that point, and maybe one of the reasons why the church has been emasculated recently is the separation of church and state, and so that the church is relegated to serving the poor, helping people, nurturing, education, hospitals, that type of thing, and less so anymore now. But the church has been taken out of protecting the state, the country, and so maybe another solution. This is a little more far fetched, but reintroducing the idea of, and this was applicable when so many Christians were being persecuted in the Middle East. Reintroducing the idea of Christian mercenaries, so Christian military. What would you call it?
Christian militias.
Yeah, mercenaries. But so a way that people could serve and be masculine in their service of the church by protecting innocent Christians.
Yeah, we had an army guy who, he was done with his tour, and I think he was, I don't know exactly the scenario, but he ends up, going back to Syria and training Christian militias. He might still be there for all I know. That was a couple of years ago, but right, that's, I don't know. That's a debatable topic, I think, for sure, because taking up arms really is always, dicey, just war theory and all that. But
no, I mean we're not initiating any violence or
right.
It's
you got to protect the women and the children and the widows and the orphans. And if somebody's going to come and kill them, then shoot, you got to do exactly that.
I'd say there are a lot of people that are embroiled in the current wars, U.S. interventionist wars over oil, basically, or Zionism, that I think would rather be fighting to protect innocent Christians.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place for that, and definitely a desire for that, and I don't know, it addresses the crisis in masculinity as well for the church.
Eric, are we following a theme? So what's I know it seems that we're following a theme here. What's our theme, Eric? We've got some points that are coming up that I think are, not necessarily disconnected, but elements of a whole.
We're sending you to war. That's our theme.
Yeah, no. I think acts of war are excluded on my life insurance policy.
That would be my life insurance policy as well, right?
About the new crusade type of thing. I mean, you don't need to go overseas to find a battle and find something to protect. I think it's just a matter of...
No, we just have to go over the lake.
Yeah, there are more potential Christians being killed here than Christians over there.
I think about
people being denied the right of baptism. That makes me pretty angry.
Uh-huh.
I almost let out an expletive after I said that, so I held myself.
Good. This is PG. Thanks for holding it back.
No, I mean I think about on the waterfront, the priest in that. He's at the bar, he's trying to encourage these guys to stand up to the mafia, and he gets into a fist fight with a bloody nose or something like that, and then he runs the guy off, and then he slams his hand down on the bar and says, "Give me a beer." Like, that's the kind of priest.
That's my kind of theology on tap.
Yeah, exactly.
What is this? What is this from?
On the waterfront.
This is on the waterfront.
You millennials don't know classics.
One of the best movies ever, and it's got probably the best depiction of a good, solid, masculine priest in a leading role. It's amazing.
Have y'all seen Calvary?
No, you recommended that.
Yeah, I recommend that. Brendan Gleeson. So, I mean, there are a lot of, I think, sacramental inaccuracies within the movie, but I think it's extremely powerful also from that point of view. So, on the waterfront. Okay, gotta check it out. People watching.
Here's a really good point,
on
though.
On the waterfront.
In a kind of a step toward the ultimate solutions, maybe just a better depiction, a more masculine depiction of priests in the fiction. Because right now, we don't have really any good... We've got a lot of the whole sex scandal in the media these days.
Sure.
Like priest as philanderer.
Yeah. Bring it.
Let's actually portray these priests in really redeeming, masculine type roles.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. So bringing the culture back. Or bringing the ideal priesthood back through culture.
Through culture. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, categorically, whenever Christians try to create some art, they, it's probably, oh gosh, we can't talk about this today.
We'll critique God Is Not Dead 2.
Another podcast. I have to watch it first. I was like, that's a horrible title. I'm not watching that.
Yeah, God Is Not Dead is...
God Is Not Dead. Yeah, that sounds, really affirming.
Yeah, it's almost a double negative in a title.
It's like, yeah, it is. God is dead, not... kind of. We're acknowledging that God is dead, but trust us, he's not.
It is.
We know you're saying that God is dead, but I mean, come on, really? Is he?
So
this is kind of weird, me saying this with a big, Nietzschean mustache.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
God is dead, and we have killed him.
That's the origin of the stash, isn't it? Nietzsche?
I mean, like my mustache?
Yeah.
Oh, I just grew a mustache. Might be the origin of the haircut now that I think about it.
Hey, Eric, do you have any closing thoughts?
Question: you guys ever get like prayer shamed?
Explain.
I was talking with a girl once, and she said, if you don't have a riveting emotional experience when you're praying, then you're doing the devil's work.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
that is some serious
preaching to stop that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
I would say, i.e. Medjugorje.
That's what this is from.
Oh right, I just opened a can of worms. But so
no, I'm skeptical of it.
Sure, yeah, right.
It's my favorite rosary.
Right, we don't know what's going on in Medjugorje, but let's just use it as an example. For instance, a lot of people go there and have extremely emotional experiences. Yet it has not been approved by the church.
Right.
But everybody loves it, and everybody wants this emotional experience of going to Medjugorje and having life-changing pilgrimage and coming back and, talking about what Our Lady's saying every day, and all of that. And that's great. I don't know if it's great because we don't know, because that's why you should just focus on something else like Fatima. So, that the jury's out on that. So, I would just be like, well, the jury's out on Medjugorje, and yet everybody's super, weepy about that.
Yeah,
including the statue of Mary over there. So,
I didn't know about that. Yeah, I'd say that this is the universal church for a reason, and while those religious experiences may come to some people and really, I don't know, affect people.
How meaningful are emotions?
Well, I think for some people that's how they communicate and get to God, and we can't. I don't know, minimize that if it's effective.
No, you don't want to minimize the meaningfulness of emotions, but you want to place it in its proper relation to your intellectual life.
Yeah, what was...
Because intellectual
C.S.
labor
Lewis,
is harder.
C.S. Lewis had a good quote about that. I think there are different paths to the truth. Yeah, and for some people it's religious prayer experience.
Right, but you can't trust your emotions. To so for instance, because they're so easy to manipulate, right?
Yeah.
Like you could be manipulating yourself and saying I'm having a spiritual experience, and really you're just getting super hyped up about maybe it's narcissism that causes the emotions. Mm-hmm. Look how Teresa of Avila I am. Look how how much Therese of Lisieux I am, because I read her book and now I'm praying like her and I'm having all these emotional experiences.
But those people did exist and they were very holy. So
they did.
I think there's a place for that, and it works for some people. But someone shouldn't be shaming you for not being Teresa of Avila.
Right, exactly.
Who had a very dry spiritual life at times, and also the opposite.
Dark night, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
so
good point.
So that would be, she would actually be a good example to cite. So have you, what do you know about Teresa of Avila? Or what do you know about St. John of the Cross? Because...
I'm worried about when she stops having those experiences, she might...
God is dead.
Lose her, God, are you dead?
Perfect example, which this kind of complicates our conversation, but Teresa of Calcutta...
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual dryness for, what was it?
Dark night.
40 years?
Yeah.
And she was struggling probably because she was looking for that emotional experience.
Yeah.
She was really driving for that, and that's what led her to do.
Well, there may be...
She was struggling.
There may be...
She was.
Good data on that it isn't effective in the long term. I'd like to see some data on that, but I still hold that it's possible to bring you to the truth. So once you get there, maybe you need to look to something else.
Yeah, you need to get away from the guitar music.
Yeah.
Well, I think the consensus is though that we can't shame people for not doing these emotional things, and
exactly.
And there's a more analytical, more logical way of connecting to God, and most men probably fall into that latter category.
Yeah.
Right. We're more pragmatic.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And
how do I apply this principle to my life? And that's going to change things a little bit, right? Tweak them a little bit so that I get closer and I get on to the next most important thing. And then I apply that to my life, and once I've sufficiently overcome that shortfall, I'm getting closer and closer by gradation, by steps, by this sort of pragmatic application of spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I'm seeing myself transformed, is through spiritual activity, or mirrored in physical and verbal, intellectual activity. And we see it probably more in functional parts, right? And I'm probably sounding very utilitarian here. But I'm just trying really just to kind of look at the opposite extreme here and say,
right.
Oftentimes I think men think about their spiritual lives as some more of an actual labor, or an actual journey that involves intellectual and physical labor that's less emotional than it is analytical and pragmatic. And it does have emotion. I mean, I've had emotional experiences, right? But I know that they're kind of worthless unless I go and make changes.
Yeah,
they're not worthless. Yeah, they're not inherently worthless. But
if you don't,
I allow
do it. You squander
I squander the opportunity if I don't go and do something pragmatic and change my approach to life.
Yeah, I think that's words of wisdom, I think, to live by. So for everyone who's listening to this or watching this, you're probably having a spiritual, religious experience.
It's probably very emotional.
Yeah, it's very emotional, and you got to go do something with that. And
eat lots of grains of salt.
Yeah, exactly. Go build a beautiful church and start a crusade.
Yeah.
Start a whiskey drinking crusade.
There you go.
Right.
But not overdo it.
Right. To the point of hilarity. And then go to adoration and see if you have an emotional experience. And then act accordingly. And change your life.
Beautiful.